Hi, B. From Seward Park?
Yeah. There was a period where you were talking about my wheel quite a bit. One lap to go. Like, I didn't even know this guy. I was just talking to you.
Oh, you were the one that came off the... Thank you for that. That was my best finish ever, actually. Yeah. Yeah, I got one in the back now, too. Hey guys, Mike here. I am at the Volunteer Park Crit in Seattle, Washington. This is the men's Cat 5 race. There are about 50 riders in the field today, so it's a pretty big crit. I think actually this would be the biggest one that I've been in so far. This is my 5th crit race. In my first year as a Cat 5 racer, and I've also done 2 road races, so this is my 7th race overall as a Cat 5. It's not going to be a super exciting race. If you've watched any of my Seward Park races, this one plays out in a pretty similar fashion. There's a big descent, which we're going down now. You can't see my speed because, once again, I forgot to turn on my Garmin, but I do turn it on in a minute or so. But basically, everybody just kind of coasts down this hill. There's a little bit of a bend at the bottom. It's just a little bit dusty, so I think people are taking it, being a little careful. And then this pretty good little uphill here. It's a bit longer than the Seward Park uphill, but not quite as steep. For folks that aren't from Seattle that don't really have Seward Park as a reference, I'd take a guess that it's maybe between like a 4 and a 6% grade. So it's not terrible, but in a crit when you're going pretty hard, we definitely hit some watts every time we come up that hill. Come around the one corner in the race, which we just hit. It's a pretty big, broad corner. As far as I know, there are no crashes or anything in that corner. It was pretty safe. This long start-finish stretch, which you can see right now, which is really cool. You come through all this like overgrowth, all these trees, and you just blast out in the sunlight. You hear the speakers of the commentator and the fans yelling, and then immediately back under the trees, and you enter this roundabout, which is very cool. There's all these bushes on the roundabout. On this particular line, I'm pretty far to the outside, but there's a bunch of laps where I kind of hug the inside on the roundabout, and you can see the bushes are kind of pushing like right out into your face, which is kind of makes for a cool effect. It makes you feel like you're going really fast. So let's see. So on this lap, what is this, our second lap? We're going to get to, what speed here? We'll probably hit like 34, 35. I think the fastest I come down this part of the race is about 36 at some point. I get a little bit more comfortable. Everybody else gets a little bit more comfortable, and we come down this part a little bit faster. But this was a really fun course. So it's kind of a bummer that they only do this race once a year, because even though I didn't really do much of anything very exciting in this race, I did have a lot of fun. There were no breakaways. Nobody went off the front. It's one of those courses where I think because of the big descent and the big uphill, it makes it really hard for anybody to kind of really get away. I think you need those like kind of long straight stretches, or you need a lot of bends for somebody to effectively, or a group of people to effectively go off the front. I stayed and watched the men's Cat 4 race after this, and one guy did come off the front for a few laps, but eventually got pulled back, but there's never really a breakaway. But again, I'm a Cat 5 racer, so my opinions on what kind of course, allows for a breakaway or not is, take it with a grain of salt. So a couple things. I do witness 2 crashes in this race, and I'll point them out. The first crash, I didn't really get on camera, but I heard it. So I just heard these like squealing of brakes. I think it was a sound of 2 bikes running into each other. And then the rider literally got launched off of his bike. And I did see that. I don't know why the GoPro didn't pick it up. I guess just because my point of view is several feet higher than the GoPro. I saw this kid literally fly off his bike completely into this bush and just disappear. I didn't take the time to do all the editing and freeze frame and all that for the crash, but I will kind of give you a warning. So if you want to pause and play around and see if you can see the bike on the ground. You're not going to see the rider in the bushes. I looked and looked. The poor guy completely ejected off and completely disappeared in his bushes. You don't see his shoes or anything. I don't know exactly what happened to him. One of my friends that races, a guy named Thomas, who actually just started his own channel, but we'll get to that later. He said the guy was pretty hurt, but we never heard the final outcome. And then there'll be a second crash, which I do catch on tape. It's kind of less of a crash. It's more of a guy just, I don't know if he bumped somebody's wheel or what happened, but as we're entering the roundabout, he just kind of tips over and goes like butt overhead and wipes out. I'm assuming he was fine. He probably popped back on his bike and got back into the race, but again, I'm not sure. As far as the race goes for me, you can probably tell by now, even though I don't have my rear camera on today, that I pretty much just hang out in the back of the race most of the time. A term that one of my teammates taught me, I thought was pretty funny, was tail gunning. He said, if you're just hanging out in the back of the race, you're just tail gunning, which I thought was kind of funny. And that's basically what I do. It's not a strategy for me. It's just, it's my 7th race, 5th crit. It's not that I'm not comfortable riding in a group. I am, but when we get down to the bottom of that hill and we're going fast, I get a little uncomfortable taking the turn at speed. And it seems like most of the other riders are pretty comfortable with it because I start to fall back basically every time. And generally when I descend, I pass people because I'm about 180 pounds, about 185 right now. So I tend to descend really well, but I'm definitely hitting my brakes when I come down that hill. And as far as I know, nobody ever crashes on that descent with that little turn. So, it's really like, it's not like any of us are at risk of crashing. I'm just a little nervous. So you'll see kind of with every lap, I catch up a little bit. Sometimes I make up some spots, and then I come out of the descents. I start to fall back a little bit, and then I have to catch back up again on the hill. So not the most effective thing for me. I end up having to put in pretty big watts every time I come up that little kicker, but it doesn't hurt me too bad. I still manage to stay comfortable in the race, more or less. Yes, you can see even here, I'm not falling too far back, but I'm definitely letting a gap open up. This part of the course right here is pretty smooth. It's like one little manhole cover, but I run over it. It's not a big deal. And then you can see by the time we get to the base of the hill, there's this big gap. So I don't know how much work everybody else is putting in, but I'm in the back now doing, 600 watts for the first half of the hill, which is kind of a bummer. So I left the little elevation gauge down in the bottom right of the screen. There's not like huge elevation change in this race. I mean, if I'm guessing, it's 40 feet or something like that. But it's a really good way to keep track of the laps without me having to manually put in a lap counter. So you can just kind of follow that and see how close we are to the end of the race. Looks like we're about a third of the way through, and I'm pretty comfortable. My heart rate's 170. When we hit the flat section, nobody really, that I can tell as far back as I am in the race, really attacks. Basically on the flat section, we just kind of roll through, hit this roundabout. I actually don't pedal through the roundabout. If you'll notice, the next laps when we come around, if you watch my cadence sensor, again, this is, just kind of a beginner thing. I don't know how far over I can lean on my bike and still pedal without having my pedal strike the ground. I ride with 172.5 millimeter cranks, and I don't even know what my bottom bracket height is, but I'm imagining that it's pretty average. So these other racers are pedaling around that roundabout. I'm sure I can too, but I'm just nervous. I've seen videos of people striking their pedal on the ground and wiping out, and so it's kind of, I kind of end up doing this sort of funny thing as I'm coming around that roundabout. I kind of just pedal like 1 or 2 times, and I'll kind of just put like all the effort on my outside pedal and kind of wobble my bike up a little bit so that I can get my right pedal, my pedal that's on the inside through. I don't know. It's kind of weird and silly. But I don't pedal strike. I don't really fall behind on that. So I guess it's okay. But yeah, just kind of rolling along. It's not the most exciting race for me. Once again, these races with the big fields, there's not these big breakaways. There's, because of the hill, the descent and the uphill, there's not even really like these surges. We're surging with power as we're coming up the hill and coming into the flat and all that, but it's not like it's any rider initiated surges. It's just kind of like the natural ones that you expect as you come around each lap. So yeah, the rider in front of me right now in blue with the orange stripe, guy's name is Tyson. He came up and said hello. I think, it was at this race. It was actually the first time I met him. Really strong guy. I see him at a bunch of my races. I'm guessing that any video I do from now on, Tyson will probably be in it. Oh, here's a crash. All right, it's going to be on the left. And you can't really see it, but you see all the riders kind of dropping back. And then we all just kind of jump back on. So the whole race really kind of slowed down. It was so loud. The crash was so loud that I think even the guys up in the front kind of slowed down when they heard it. I think our speed came down to like 15 miles an hour coming up this hill. So pretty crazy. That was only my second time ever witnessing a crash in a Cat 5 race. So far I've been pretty lucky, and I guess the other riders in my races have been pretty lucky. So yeah. Oh, and check out this kid in front of me. So this guy's definitely a junior, young guy. You can see him in the blue shorts, gray shirt. So he's got street shoes on. He's got like the old, clip pedal covers, the kind where you just like slide your feet in. He's wearing, basically gym shorts, and totally strong. I end up riding in and around him for the majority of the race. So, the kid trains a lot, probably races a lot. He races better than I do, so I don't know why doesn't have any gear. I feel like I'd be a little sketched out riding with those old clip pedals, but he seems to do pretty well. He does do a couple funny things, actually. I remember later in the race he was kind of bopping around in the race without really looking, just kind of going left, right, trying to jump into all these gaps. I know it sketched out a couple riders. Somebody was yelling at him, and there were a couple guys that were like trying to go really wide around him. I don't know if I caught much of that on tape. For the most part, he and basically everybody else in the race, I thought, did a really nice job. Yeah, so we're coming up to the top of this hill. My buddy Thomas in the checkered jerseys on the left. Not on my team. None of these guys are on my team. There are, I think, 2 other Cat 5 guys that race in my club, my cycling club, but neither of them really race crits. One of them only does gravel, and then one of them just does road races. He's kind of like a triathlon guy. So my club's pretty top heavy. It's mostly like kind of like the P1, 2, 3s and some 4s. Not a lot of 5s, but still an awesome club for me because they guaranteed do weekly rides, rain or shine, every Saturday, every Sunday. They always do a team ride, and I know a lot of the clubs in the Seattle area don't do that. So even though I don't really get like a lot of interaction or support as a Cat 5, I basically show up to these races by myself. Sometimes see my teammates, generally I don't. I still get that support of being able to go to the team rides and get reps riding in a group, and generally riding with people that are a lot stronger than me. So yeah, you're not going to see me really discussing like team strategy or anything, because I never have teammates in these races, but I do ride for a team. I do get to go on team rides, and I do get training tips. Our club president, or if he's a president, or I don't know what his title is, but the guy that runs the club, he comes out to the team rides, and he's given me tips before and kind of support and stuff. So yeah, I still definitely value being in a club. but I've ended up making buddies with, you know, guys like Thomas on the left here in the checkered jersey that aren't on my team. But it's Cat 5. I mean, we're not out here trying to, you know, murder each other. I mean, we all want to do well and race well, but you know, when I talk to like Thomas again, who's on the left here, you know, we say, hey, it's, you know, we're still learning how to race. We're new. You know, if Thomas is in a race with me and I ever have an opportunity to help him, I would. I mean, it's really at this point we're trying to get better, but we're just racing for fun. I mean, any finish I have, if I have a good finish, I'm super excited. But I don't go to these races with like, personally, I don't go to these races with like this really like hardcore strategy. I'm gonna do this and this, and you know, I'm not gonna like elbow anybody out of position or anything like that. You know, at this point, it's kind of just, you know, I don't know. The races to me are kind of like a reward for my training. I go out and ride hard on my own. I do little kind of non-standard random intervals. Go out and do like 30-mile rides. I mean, I don't have a training plan. I just kind of go out and ride. But I ride hard, and so when I come to these crits, it's kind of like a reward. It's like, okay, I rode hard, which means I'm going to be able to do a good job in this crit and have fun and feel powerful. And you know, if you've raced any crits, if you're a Cat 5 like I am, you know, they're hard, but they're also very rewarding. Like, it's a great feeling to be out here with, you know, a group of 50 guys and be able to hang on. And I'm not able to hang on in every race. I mean, you've seen in some of my videos, I get dropped. Some races I finish well, some races I get dropped. You know, it's kind of it's kind of all across the board for me, you know, in my first year here. You know, if you are watching this video because you're thinking about racing the volunteer park crit in 2020 or 2021, and just trying to see what Cat 5 looks like, do it. I mean, like I said in my Ballard crit video last time, if you're looking at the speeds and you're thinking, man, this is way too fast for me, there's no way I can hang in this. I mean, right now we're going 21, which isn't too crazy, but the average speed for this race for me was like 24 miles an hour, and that's pretty fast. I mean, if I were to go out and ride for 30 minutes at 24 miles an hour, I mean, I actually don't know that I could ride for 30 minutes straight at 24 miles an hour. And I absolutely could not, if I was alone, I could not race this loop at a 24 mile per hour average. You know, when I was doing warm-up laps, and I was going pretty hard on my warm-up laps, I was probably averaging like 20 or 21 miles per hour. I mean, drafting behind people, it makes such a massive difference, and especially where I'm at. I mean, I'm just sitting in the very back. Even though I'm not on somebody's wheel, like directly on somebody's wheel right now, I'm getting such a huge draft. You know, just come out and do it. If you get dropped in the first couple laps, these kinds of races, I think in the volunteer park they do pull people, but you know, in a lot of these kinds of races, you can get dropped and jump back in, and just practice your drafting, practice riding behind people. You know, the races that I have gotten dropped in, other than Ballard where I got pulled, I just stayed in the race and I raced as long as I could, and I still had a good time. You know, kind of going back to the speed thing, when I'm riding on my own on a totally flat course, I could probably ride, if it's totally flat, I could probably ride like 23 miles per hour for half an hour. I can't do 24 miles per hour for half an hour, I'm pretty sure, on my own, and I can do it. I had no problem in this race. You know, fitness was not a problem for me. It was just kind of skill and comfort on the bike that had, you know, whatever effect it had on my race. You know, my results in this race are based purely on like my skill. It was not a fitness thing. And I'm in fine shape, but I'm in my first year. So I mean, if you're out there riding, you're getting your reps in, you're working hard, you know, you're doing some little sprints, some little intervals, even if they're not really measured. I mean, I don't measure mine. I go out and, you know, I see a little hill and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to try to do 400 watts for the whole hill. You know, maybe that's like a minute long, and that's like a little interval, and I just kind of do stuff like that, and that's, you know, that's been enough for me to come and have fun in these Cat 5 races. So please come out, do it. You know, I think the Seattle Cat 5 scene is it seems pretty good. Most of these races that I go to are really big. I mean, this is a 50-person race in Cat 5. It means every single person in this race, for the most part, is in their first couple of years of cycling. Or, there's a few people that maybe have been away from cycling for a few years and come back. But I mean, maybe there's like 5 guys in any one of these races that are like, much higher than Cat 5, in their ability, but just, they've been away for a couple of years or something. I mean, most of these guys, nobody's really blowing anybody else out. We're all just riding. I mean, there are guys falling off the back and get then. I did hear that some folks, were getting pulled, but don't worry about it. I mean, I got pulled in my last race in my Ballard Crit. If you watch that one, I got pulled 2/3 of the way in the race. I mean, I really wasn't even in the race for that long, and I still had a blast. It was still a good time. So, yeah, I think I'm watching myself here, and I think I am doing a little bit better on the descents. Folks are still coming around me. There's still some gaps forming. Yeah, this is not too bad. It looks like I'm carrying my momentum back up into the pack a lot better than I was earlier. I'm guessing that I'm just getting a little bit more comfortable in the race. I do have a confession, if you're wondering why I'm not talking about this race very, very specifically. I am doing my voiceover and my editing on this race almost a month after I actually raced it. So I remember, I got all this video, and then I got video of some other stuff that I was doing, some other sort of races and some bouldering videos, some of my other hobbies. And I remember this race as not being like terribly exciting, so I kind of just put off like editing it and putting it together. We're about halfway through the race now, and you can see that, yeah, it's not like super exciting. I'm kind of just like sitting in, riding wheels, just drafting. I'm definitely working on my cornering skills, and you can see I've taken the inside line on that roundabout a bunch of times, which was good practice for me. I took the inside line intentionally because I wanted to work on just kind of seeing how that felt. Most of my races up to this point, I was taking the outside line because, I was afraid. I was afraid of the cornering, so I'm kind of doing, having like little victories. Yeah, so this race is staying together really well. I really wish I would have had my rear camera so we could see, what the race is looking like behind me. Like I said earlier in the race, there's 50 riders signed up, so about 50 guys here, and just taking a quick look. I mean, it looks like basically everybody's in front of me. I know some people did get pulled out. My guess is they probably didn't get pulled out until, a couple laps short of the finish. There were a couple times where, maybe you saw earlier, where we were passing some riders that were going significantly slower than the group. I'm assuming those were dropped riders that were just, kind of dropping back into the peloton. They could have been flat tires, I'm not sure. But one thing I wanted to say about Volunteer Park, so we just went through the start-finish line. If you haven't raced here before, you haven't been out here before, take a look at that start-finish line when we come through. So the park itself is really old. I mean, I'm pretty sure the park is like over 100 years old, and it's been remodeled like multiple times. I think the last the initial major revision was like in the 50s or something. There's like a placard that kind of describes like the history of the park, and I'm gonna kind of get this a little bit wrong. I looked at the placard really quickly, but Volunteer Park, it's like named after some volunteer military folks. That's the best I can do. I don't want to be too inaccurate on that, but there's also like a big water reservoir, and there's an arboretum, and there's a bunch of cool stuff. So if you live in the Seattle area, Volunteer Park's gorgeous. Kind of an interesting little park. It's right up in Capitol Hill. And it has this awesome loop, which you can use for racing. I've never taken this loop. I've never been on this road before this race, so I'm planning on coming back and checking this out. I don't know like what this road looks like on a regular day, if there's a lot of traffic that comes through, if it's mostly just walkers and cyclists. But anyways, I've kind of rambled through this whole lap. We're coming back on the start finish line. Hopefully you can take a look at it. At some point they had put down this stone, like, so it's not asphalt at the start finish line, it's actually like these stone pieces, and they're kind of crumbling. So here we go. Hopefully we can kind of see the stone. Yeah, it's like all these stone blocks, and they're kind of crumbling a little bit. So if you're gonna, oh wait, here comes a crash. Sorry, it's gonna be on the left. All right, it went really quick. You might have to rewind it. I don't know what happened there exactly. I heard this guy hit his brakes. I heard all this clicking. I don't know if he bumped into somebody, but yeah, he slowed down and basically just kind of flopped over, did like a somersault, and sent his bike flying. I took a snapshot of that and I put it at the very end of the video, so you can kind of see where the poor guy, his head's like almost on the ground, his butt's in the air, and his front wheel's like sideways. So it was just like this little tiny crash. I don't think anybody else was involved in it. It didn't have a huge effect on the race, and I'll take a guess the guy probably popped back up and got back in. I mean, he crashed at like maybe 10 miles an hour, but yeah. Anyways, what I was saying about the start finish line. Yeah, if you're gonna race this in the future, I definitely recommend coming out and just kind of getting some confidence on that, because it's kind of a beat up little bit of roadway. Like, the rest of the asphalt is really nice. There's like one manhole cover. The asphalt's a little rough, on the hill, coming up the hill, but it's not bad. There's not like any big cracks or anything. So just the start finish line, it's a little funky. Most of the time that I come through the start finish, I kind of hang to the right. I felt like that part was just a little bit cleaner. The laps where I'm on somebody's wheel, I just kind of take whatever line that they're taking. But yeah, it's a beautiful race. Watching the race is actually pretty fun. So the start finish line, you get to see a big part of the race, because there's a long, as you've seen in the video, there's a long roll up to the start finish line. And then as soon as people go past it, they have to start slowing to go around that roundabout. So you kind of get like a pretty good view of the race. Like I said before, I hung out and I watched the men's Cat 4. I had a teammate racing in that, and it's pretty good viewing, because people are, so before they come into that run up to the start finish line, they've just crested that hill, so nobody has a ton of power, so everybody speeds up pretty slowly. A lot of crits at the start finish line, people are flying through at like 25 to 30 miles an hour, even the Cat 5, but because of this hill, people are coming through the start finish line like kind of in the lower 20s. So you get a better opportunity to kind of like, see your racer. If you're there watching your boyfriend or girlfriend racing, mom, dad, or whatever, you get a chance to kind of see him come through, see the pack come through. It's pretty cool. So yeah, it looks like we have 3 laps left after this. Or maybe it's just, yeah, I think it's 3 laps. So just using my little elevation guide in the bottom right. But yeah, at this point, my heart rate's still sitting around 170. So, 170 for me, just it means I'm putting out effort, but I'm not pressed at all. I really at no point in this race was I like in trouble or pressed. My heart rate never got super high until the final sprints. It just kind of felt like, I don't know. I guess I haven't been in enough races to say what it felt like. It felt just kind of like a kind of fast, kind of crazy group ride. No big surges, like I said earlier. Just kind of basically you're coasting down this hill. I don't think I was putting in much power coming down the hill. You get a really nice long breather. I was braking around this turn a little bit. As I get more experience, if I were to race this again, I probably wouldn't be braking on this turn. Probably be letting my momentum carry me forward, which, I don't know, I guess I'm doing an okay job on this lap. I think that might have been one of the few laps where I didn't create any gaps. But we're getting close to the finish of the race, so I'm getting excited. Yeah, I'm doing it. I don't know. Looking at this now, I guess I'm doing an okay job. I'm still trailing off the back, but I'm staying close. I'm riding wheels. I'm It's like about 500 watts at the top of the hill, which is tough, but it's nothing too crazy. I think I did a pretty good job most of the time with that one right-hand turn, the one I just came through. I felt like I did a pretty decent job there, actually. In the Ballard crit, my last video, my cornering was pretty terrible, but my cornering was better in this race. But again, like I was saying, the Volunteer Park corners they're pretty non-substantial. I think this is a really good beginner level race. It's not very technical. This little roundabout here, if you take the outside line, which I'm doing right now, you can keep pedaling, which, just looking at my cadence counter, I did a little bit of pedaling around that. We weren't going too fast, the low 20s. I felt a little bit more nervous pedaling on the inside line, but again, if you live in Seattle and you want to get yourself in shape and get ready to race like actual crits like this, Volunteer Park and Ballard, the Seward Park crit it's fantastic. It really gets you trained up for Volunteer Park because the races are so similar. But it's $20. You can rent numbers there. You go out. There's a combined Cat 4 or 5 that races at 5:30, I think. You can show up early and just do practice races. They never pull you from the race. If you get dropped, you can just basically let the group come back around and jump back on, and that's totally fine. I highly recommend it because like I've said in other videos, I coach volleyball during the weeknights. I was only able to ride the Seward Park crit a couple times, and I haven't been able to ride it since, which is too bad. I mean, that definitely was a big factor in getting me ready, I think, to race Cat 5. Not being able to do that every week, I think, has had kind of a negative effect on my racing. I don't feel like I was quite as confident, or I haven't gotten any more confident in racing probably in the last month. I basically have done 2 races in the last month, Ballard and then this one, Volunteer Park. So let's see. Oh, we're actually coming into our last lap. So we'll see how I do here. I remember, I can give a quick summary. I remember I'm kind of trailing off the back here. I try to carry my momentum through. You'll see in a moment, I get caught behind a rider who is struggling a little bit, and I get a little boxed in. So here I'm making a nice move. I should be following this guy on the right and shooting that gap, but I don't. I drop to the left, and then this rider right here is kind of falling back, and I get a little boxed in, and now I'm in bad position. So you can see the front part of the race has kind of taken off, and then there's all these gaps in front of me, and then I'm basically like in that gapped area. But I put it in a sprint anyways. Here we go. So I don't think I even hit 1,000 watts, but I get down to my drops, I stand up, you see my head pop into the screen, I'm just hammering. I'm like, what the heck? I might be way back here, but I'm going to sprint into the finish line anyways. So dun 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 dun, and that's the finish. And 18th place, there's Thomas, my buddy Thomas, right in front of me on the left. Yeah, it was pretty fun. I just put this little screenshot up because I thought it was really pretty the way you approach the start finish line. But yeah, I got 18th place out of 50, which is pretty good, top 50%. Average speed for the race, my average speed was 24.1. Max speed was almost 37. I think that was in the last lap. My average power was 259, so not too high. Normalized was just under 300. My max power was 1072, but that did not happen during the sprints. That was, God, it was like maybe the 7th lap or something. I just, for some reason, put in this huge surge coming up the hill. I think my max power that I put in my quote-unquote sprint was like maybe 970. So I haven't been able to break 1,000 watts at a sprint at the end of a race yet. So that's a goal. That's a goal that I have. Also got some pictures. My buddies Josh and Tyson, who I've just met in the last couple weeks. And then my buddy Thomas, who runs the Get Launched YouTube page. Check him out. And I will finish with this little video of our poor cycling buddy on the left here who wiped out. See you guys next time.